I was thinking about the inception of the program. I looked at other VC-run programs, which were primarily scout and deal sourcing programs that leverage students to find them the best student-led startups on campus. I had done these myself, and yeah, as I mentioned, you don't really learn the core skills of evaluating companies, winning them over, and then helping them post-investment, and having the frameworks of actually building a company yourself. We've had students have done like maybe 2 or 3 of them in the past. And which one are they the most fond of? They're the most fond of the RippleX Fellowship because we took the time and the effort to teach them things. We took the time and the effort to help them, and we took the time and the effort to build a community to support them.
Hey everyone, this is Prashant and I'll be host of the VC 10X podcast, and today we have Dominic Lau with us. Dominic is a partner at Ripple Ventures, where they are investing in early stage enterprise software, developer tools, and Web3 startups. At Ripple Ventures, Dominic has also started a student fellowship where they are nurturing student entrepreneurs. In this episode, our focus will be more on that. We talk about why they started a student fellowship program, how it ties into the larger scheme of things at Ripple Ventures, how is it structured, who can benefit from it, how they select candidates for the fellowship, some exciting past alumni, how's it different from other student fellowships, and lots more. So without wasting any time, let's dive straight in. Hey Dominic, so good to have you on the VC 10X podcast. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good as well, and so good to have you on the podcast to talk about all things of the new student accelerator that you have started at Ripple Ventures. But before we get deeper into that, what's your story like and how you started investing?
Yeah. No, thanks so much for having me on the show, Prashant. I'm a partner at Ripple Ventures. We're focused on pre-seed and seed stage enterprise software and developer tool investing across North America. I started off my career originally in accounting and finance. And what I did was work with a lot of companies ranging from hedge funds to real estate investment trusts. And I ended up also working and consulting with some tech companies. And I naturally gravitated towards the latter of the tech company bunch because the culture, the kind of energy and innovation that was happening with those companies was just so much more exciting to me personally. So what I ended up doing was starting to freelance with some early stage companies in Toronto and Waterloo, where I went to school, across a couple of different accelerator programs like Velocity, Communitech, the DMZ, and I also went online to freelance with some emerging managers, also starting their own venture funds. So helping some folks try to figure out portfolio construction, figure out how to source companies, what it would like to build a team, building their pitch deck for LPs. So I went about trying to find a lot of different experience in this early stage ecosystem. And I saw a huge gap in this pre-seed stage where there's so many founders and aspiring VCs who didn't have any expertise whatsoever and didn't have like a traditional network to be able to go become successful in the space. So I wanted to help kind of create and bridge that gap for the earlier stage ecosystem. And that's when I met Matt roughly 5 years ago now, when he was just starting up Ripple Ventures. And away we went. But that's kind of my quick little story.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly a gap that's there when a student wants to, or maybe is interested in entrepreneurship. So there's no direct way for them to like really get their hands wet, right? Because they don't have the network, like you mentioned, or the kind of knowledge to just directly get in, and providing the kind of environment for them where they can actually flourish and get started. And I think that's what the motive is with Ripple Ventures. So this was the basic reason why this student accelerator was started. Did this start when the firm was established 5 years back, or is this a new program that started right now?
Yeah, so I would call it more of a program with a couple of different pillars of how we run that program in different ways. It's not a formal accelerator program, but I can kind of get into the details of how it actually runs. But maybe I can start off with why I started that program in the first place.
Absolutely, that'd be great. Let's start with that.
Awesome. So 4 years ago, it was right after I joined the firm. Obviously, after I got kind of my everything set up, I got into the motions. I wanted to figure out how I could give back to the community. So as I mentioned, when I was going through the process of getting any experience in this venture and startup ecosystem, it wasn't as easy as, hey, like calling my friend or calling my dad and asking him if he has like VC introductions he can make for me, or hey, like calling my uncle who has like a lot of friends working at Amazon. Like it wasn't like that. And I know it wasn't like that for a lot of people, especially underrepresented people who did not go to Ivy League schools. And that was me. And it was that sparked my passion for starting this project basically under Ripple Ventures called the Ripple X Fellowship Program. And when it started out, I wanted to first look at what the options were out there in the ecosystem ran by venture funds. And what there were scouting programs and deal sourcing programs that did give students exposure to just like deal sourcing, but it didn't give students exposure of how do I actually build a venture backable business, and how do I have my own framework or develop one to evaluate early stage companies as an investor. So what I wanted to do was create a program that flipped the model on its head, where it was education and content first. And I would compare it similar to like a YC startup school in some ways, but with a VC flavor attached to it, where every school semester I get roughly 25 students. Half of them are founders, half of them are aspiring VCs. 90% are people of color or ethnically diverse. Over 50% are gender diverse as well. So what we do is teach these hard skills of company building and evaluating companies to help them kind of scale this program. So it has been running for 4 years now. We are wrapping up our 13th cohort. To date, we've had over 300 alumni students. We have helped underrepresented founders raise over $50 million in venture capital financing after the program. And I've also helped place nearly over 50 students into part-time or full-time VC roles after the program. So a lot of really good data and metrics to support the success of the program.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. And who is this program exactly for? I get that it's mostly for students, but is it mostly for students who are aspiring to be a founder or aspiring to be a VC? One of these two things.
Yeah, it's for both. So we have it pretty open-ended because a lot of the students, they're kind of just going through the motions of their own journeys, and sometimes you cross the chasm, right? We have, I'll tell you an example. Roger, he was one of our students. He started off as an aspiring VC. He was a part of the VC program at his school. And then afterward, he realized, hey, I want to build a company in like a social investing space. So he made this switch over after learning all this stuff from us. And then he ended up going to YC and raising a seed round afterwards. But he started off as like a quote unquote VC in our program. But to be kind of clear on who we're looking for, so there's 3 pillars of the program. There's the flagship program, there's the online course, and then we also have the fellow fund. So the flagship program is the 25 students per semester. That's what I was telling you about earlier. That is for undergrad and grad students in North America who have a deep passion and proven involvement for building and investing in early stage companies. But every school semester, we only take like 2 to 5% of all the applicants to come through. What do all the other students get? And what about all the students that aren't in North America or have graduated? A year and a half ago, I created an online course that basically scaled the learning and resources that we had in the program that was previously private into a fully free and public course that anyone can take. So today, I have over 1,000 students from over 30 different countries, of all walks of life, from someone in high school all the way to someone who is 50 years old and retired from McKinsey or running their own venture fund or angel investing and trying to learn about venture. So that's for anyone in the world. And then for the fellow fund, we're also cutting 25 to 50K checks into student-led startups with at least one underrepresented founder. So that one is also focused on North America. So we have a pretty wide range of how we cater to folks.
Yeah, very interesting. So is it like that once a student comes in, they are given options that you can either choose a VC track or choose a founder track, and based on that, your curriculum will differ? Or is it like this, everyone goes through the same stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everyone actually goes through the same content.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is when we recruit folks, we try to get a balance of archetypes of people. So we try to get a balance of like people starting companies as well as people interested in venture. But if you think about the core concepts, a lot of it's very similar. So I'll give you an example. Customer interviews is a really important thing, especially for like idea slash like pre-seed stage companies. For founders, you have to know how to ask the right questions and structure that process and digest the information that's coming from all these people. On the VC side, you also want to have enough like expert references and customer calls with the company that who they're selling to. And you also need to digest all of that information. So for us, we teach a framework of how to ask good questions, how to run a customer interview, and it caters to both sides as an example.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So basically, you teach everything that's kind of relevant to both these fields, and it doesn't matter if you go on to become a founder or a VC. It's going to be helpful, right? And
Exactly.
I'd like to learn more about how is the program structured and what is basically the table of contents, right? What all can the students expect to learn when they join the program?
Yeah. So from a structure perspective, the flagship program with the 25 students that runs roughly 3 times a year. And we go through core concepts, as I mentioned, like customer interviews, market deep dives, term sheets. Yesterday, we just went through an exercise of like, hey, like, how do you model a cap table? How do you convert a safe note in an equity round that's happening? How do you calculate the share price? What do you include in calculating the share price? So all these actual tangible skills that no one actually teaches you, we try to teach you. And we have all this in the online course as well. So the online course is self-paced. Anyone can start it at any time. And we have assignments. I have like the same project and exercise that I did yesterday with the students, anyone on the online course can do as well themselves. And I have a video walkthrough solution. I have a video walkthrough of the PDF presentation that I usually do. So it's very easy for you to just start it anytime that you want. All our programming is completely free, completely accessible, and we also have a very strong partnership with RBCX, which is the Royal Bank of Canada as well, who's the flagship sponsor for the program. So without them, it wouldn't be possible to power all of the kind of resources and continue to keep them free for our students.
Absolutely. So, is there any difference between being a cohort member, which like directly learns from you, or learning online with your resources that you have just put them online, right? So,
Yeah.
is there any like more benefit to joining a cohort with you with those 25 guys than just doing it
Yeah.
online at your own pace?
Yeah. The huge value add of being a part of the program is having access to me directly. So obviously, I can't be a resource to all of the 1,000 students on the online course right now. But what I can do is be very, very helpful to a subset of 25 students every semester. Create so that's one, access to me and the rest of the Ripple Ventures team. The second is access to the community, which is the cohort and the alumni of the program as well. So we have a very, very strong alumni base. Some students have found co-founders from our alumni base. Some founders have been backed by aspiring VCs who then worked at VC funds from the program, if that makes sense. So we have like this really interesting ecosystem. We also like have students who graduated and are now working at LPs as well. So the way that I like to describe what we're building and the true value add of being a part of that program is being a part of this like PayPal mafia that we're creating with the RippleX community, where we have a really unique edge of early stage founders that are now raising capital, getting to the next stages, all the way to VCs at the biggest funds now. We just had students graduate and start at Bessemer, General Catalyst, General Atlantic, like all these tier one big name funds in the world. We have alumni now working there and also at the LPs that are powering the ecosystem. So that's the two main value adds is access to me and access to the community.
That's great. And while you're selecting these folks to like come directly learn from you, get access to you, basically, what are the kind of things that you're looking for in these students, right, to get
Yeah.
them in the program and start learning with you?
Yeah. The biggest thing that we look for is initiative and a proven example of acting on their passion for startups and venture. A lot of people say that they are interested in VC, interested in building companies. So we ask them, hey, what have you done so far? What I like to say is you can do a lot of these types of jobs without capital, right? You can go pretend to be a VC without making a check. You can go find the YC batch that was just launched out. You can pick the top 10 companies based off of what you think, and then you can also pick of top like 5 companies in an anti portfolio that maybe you don't like at first, but could be breakout companies. Do you have to write a check and have a fund to do that or work at a VC fund? No, all of this is public information. You could pay $30 for a Crunchbase Pro account and just scrape like the companies and pick a bunch that are really good, like and present your ideas of why you think those are the best. So what we love to encourage students, especially on the venture side, is you can do the job without having the job or having the capital to start. On the founder side, exact same thing. You can start building a company without money. You don't have to raise capital to build a company. That's the biggest kind of mindset mistake that I see student founders have is like, oh, I need to raise an angel round or a pre-seed round to get started. No, you need to talk with customers to get started. That is the number one most important thing. So when founders come through, the first question we ask is, hey, how many customers have you spoken with? And if they're like, I just like spoke to myself and a couple of friends, and that's like what we're building for, that's wrong. If they tell me, hey, I've talked with like 100 people on campus for my new like social app that I'm talking about. I've talked with all the other people who have built companies in this space. I've spoken with some alumni who might have some connections in this like ecosystem and try to learn as much as possible. And this is what I learned. That's a very different story. That's a very different level of initiative that we look for. So it's a long-winded answer to like what we look for because it's very intangible but very tangible at the same time. But it's really a showcase of initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great answer and a great takeaway as well for all our listeners that if you're thinking you want to start something and you think that you require some external capital, and I think a lot of people do think that they need to raise a round or like
Yeah.
get some people together to start working on something. I think these days there are so many free resources available, and one you like we have discussed in this call itself that if you want to learn VC or be a founder, you can take that free course that's out
Yeah.
there and with proven success. Right, the alumni have been posted to some reputable VC firms and running successful companies. So all these resources are out there. So folks who really want to do something, just get out there, get your hands dirty, use these free resources, and build something out of it, right? And I think that's a great criteria for evaluating who makes the
Yeah.
cut to learning with you, right? All right. So
Exactly.
the next question is about the deal terms, right? So you said that you're also investing in some of the folks who decide to start their companies from the accelerator. Then,
Yeah.
in case they go on to start a company, then what are the deal terms? Are you offering like standard deal terms to
Yeah.
all the alumni, or is it like based on do they like perform well on some criteria? Do you still evaluate that is this the company we want to invest in, or is it like
Yeah.
given that okay, if they're selected in the program they're getting this much money for sure? Is it like that
Yeah. Yeah,
or
great
not?
question. So,
Yeah.
to clarify, the fellow fund operates more as a investment strategy than an accelerator, like a formal quote unquote accelerator program. So, the fellow fund is an extension of that program, but students who receive investment do not have to be a part of the program. So, the first 2 checks that we've written out of the fellow fund so far were referrals of um, alumni fellows who knew of some people building companies in their kind of network and forwarding them over to us. And for us, our strategy is to invest at the earliest stages because we have access to this early stage grassroots ecosystem on that student side through the fellowship program. We have this new strategy at the fund level to cut 25 to 50K checks on standard terms into these student-led startups to ideally funnel into core investments at the fund. So we do provide a lot of resources similar to the ones we do in the fellowship program. They also have access to everyone on the Ripple Ventures team if they receive investment. And they also get the community of being a Ripple Ventures CEO, which is highly, highly important for especially first time founders, getting access to people like Braden, who is CEO at VoiceFlow, or Justin, who's CEO at Rose Rocket. Like, having them get access to those later stage CEOs in our portfolio is very, very important. But to be clear, it is not a traditional accelerator program. You do not have to be a fellowship student / alumni to get funding. It is more of a broad reach program to support student led startups with at least one diverse founder. But they do have to be operating within the thematic areas where Ripple Ventures is investing. So the 4 criteria, honestly, are: has to be building an enterprise software developer tools. They have to be based in North America because it has to fit our investment strategy. They have to be student-led startups or student-led founders, and they have to have at least one underrepresented founder with material ownership on the cap table. So those are the 4 things that we look for, and we do all of our deals on standard terms.
That's great. So basically, you're only investing in the sectors that are included in Ripple Ventures major thesis, which is the fund's thesis as well, right? So they're investing at the student accelerator is also happening by the thesis. And
Yeah,
what's the reasoning behind that? Why don't you just open it up? Because students can really be interested in any of the sectors, right? They can
yeah,
find found startup in any of the sectors that they're interested in, right? And
yeah,
it's not like you're making a big commitment at the very initial stage. It's not a really big check. It's a small check, but
yeah.
why don't you support more founders and open it up, give them more freedom, and let them do what they want to do, in whichever sector they find the most interesting. What's the reasoning
Yeah.
behind that?
Yeah, so the main reasoning is because we want to have this strategy. So we're not giving out grants, right? We are investing capital, and as virtue of that, to be responsible to our LPs, our limited partners, we have to invest that capital into the strategies in which we promised them we would deploy them in, which is in enterprise software and developer tools in North America. So the strategy with that fellow fund is to be able to support these first time grassroots stage founders building in these verticals to eventually, hopefully, get enough traction and get to a later stage where we can support them with a core investment, which could be anywhere between $250,000 up to $1 million one day. So that's the reason from a more strategy level. But the other thing is, we are already supporting founders building anything through the fellowship program. So, as I mentioned before, I've helped founders raise over $50 million in funding for all types of businesses. So, for us, there's so many different ways that we're supporting the ecosystem, either through us giving the capital, or if you literally ask any one of our founders, I've introduced all of them to our investor network. I've helped them raise capital. Like, you can ask any of them, and they will tell you, we were not inside of Dom's thesis at Ripple, but he helped me raise capital in some form or shape. So that's how we support companies of all types, because we have such a broad network that we're able to support all these companies.
That's great. I love that approach. And that's fair reasoning that, okay, you have a thesis and your LPs have given you capital based on a specific thesis and you have to follow that. But great that you're also been helping them by making intros and stuff
Yeah,
like that. So great. All right. So now moving on to your, you have been running this program for quite some time now. So what do you think is the thing that these student founders or these super early founders who are not very experienced need training or need help the most in? Like, what are those areas that
yeah,
they need the most help, in your
yeah,
opinion?
yeah. We find that a lot of student and first time founders have this shiny red ball syndrome, where the coolest and most exciting thing, they'll just focus in on and go after. So our job is to help first time founders focus on the right things, which is the customer and the problem space. As I mentioned before, too many students and first time founders build for themselves and build for their own personal problem spaces. Be like, oh, I faced this problem when I was working at X. oh, like I saw my uncle face this problem when he was going through Y. But they never validate the problem space outside of their immediate experience in their network. And I'll tell you, even some of our most seasoned founders, we backed a company called Harmonize, where they had been in that vertical of like that IT space for like over a decade plus. And still, the first thing they did when they started the company was talk to 50 different customers in who were department leaders in the vertical they're focusing in. Even the industry experts are talking with more experts to validate their space. So by that, a student should be doing 10x that because they aren't industry experts. They have to do that to learn more and get up to speed. So our goal at the program and our philosophy at the fund is to teach the frameworks of how to identify a problem space, how to validate it with enough customers, and figure out if it's a big enough problem to build a business around. So we have a huge expert network. We have all the department leads at all of our portfolio companies. We have an alumni base of 300 plus in the fellowship program where we can ask questions. Everyone has their own experiences now. So what we do is help scale the customer discovery process, which is honestly what I think is one of the biggest value adds that we have for these early stage founders, because it's really hard to get in contact with people who have experience, especially if you're a student. So we bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's super great. And would you also like to talk about any of the specific success stories of the program and some people who have like got on to work for some reputable funds or maybe started their own companies?
Yeah. First and foremost, like I want to shout out Naz, Katie, and Terja on my team right now. All three of them were RippleX fellow alumni. So we have some of the top kind of students from the program always reach out to us and be like, hey, we love what you're doing. We'd love to be a part of it and help you scale at the fellowship and also work at Ripple. So we've been able to do that. So I want to shout out the Naz, Katie, and Terja on our team, who are amazing team members who graduated from the fellowship program. There's other founders like Maddie Rifkin, who's the CEO at Mount. She's raised like a seed round from Pillar, General Catalyst, and more. We also have like Kaito Cunningham, who is the CEO at Utopia Labs. He raised from Kindred Ventures, Coinbase, Paradigm, and even more. We had Alexa just started Bessemer. Jeremy, who runs the Seed and Rough Draft Ventures program at General Catalyst. We have Mia, who just started at General Atlantic. And then we have Ariel, who was a fellow in the same batch as Naz on my team. She worked at Ripple, and then she went to work at Shopify's corp dev team. She also started her own company, Pecco Produce, that she just sold to a larger player in the space. So that's another success story. We have roughly like 4 or 5 alumni now who have actually exited their businesses, student startups who have sold their companies. So the long answer to, there's a lot of great students with success stories, either in venture as founders or even just like friends of the firm who now work at big tech companies running cool projects. So I'm very, very proud of the people that we've been able to hire, support, and just like have around as friends in the ecosystem. So that's the biggest success, is having all these folks.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great set of people that you've worked with and they're doing well in their own fields, right? And my last main question for you before we move on to the rapid fire round will be how is Ripple Ventures fellowship program different from other fellowship programs? Because these days there are a lot of fellowship programs doing rounds. So how do you think do you stand out in all those fellowships?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, when I was thinking about the inception of the program, I looked at other VC-run programs, which were primarily scout and deal sourcing programs that leverage students to find them the best student-led startups on campus. I had done these myself, and yeah, as I mentioned, you don't really learn the core skills of evaluating companies, winning them over, and then helping them post-investment, and having the frameworks of actually building a company yourself. So that's the main difference between us and any other student fellowship program. And we've had students have done like maybe 2 or 3 of them in the past. And which one are they the most fond of? They're the most fond of the RippleX fellowship because we took the time and the effort to teach them things. We took the time and the effort to help them. and we took the time and the effort to build a community to support them. So those are the big kind of differences. And the other pairing that I love to support students with is I tell them to do Ripple X and also do like YC Startup School as well, so that you get kind of two different flavors, because they obviously have a large roster of very successful founders telling you how to build, and we have some of that, but not all of that. So I love to pair these two programs together, because I teach like a lot of like VC frameworks and startup frameworks, but also pair it with like the experience that the YC ecosystem has. Like that's what I love to do. So yeah, that's the main difference.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great approach. That okay, if there is someone better and someone bigger than us doing something that's good, then why not like add it up to
Yep.
what we are doing and make it even bigger? That's a great approach. All right, so now let's move on to the rapid fire round. So here I'll ask you 5 quick questions about the investments that you're making in the student program mostly, and
Sure.
you have to give 5 quick answers. All right. So the first one goes: what are the sectors and regions you invest in?
Sectors are enterprise software and developer tools. The regions are North America, so Canada and the US.
What's the typical stage of investment?
Pre-seed focused, so we invest at the earliest stages.
What's the typical check size that you put in?
For the fellow fund, we cut 25 to 50K checks, and for core investments, we cut anywhere between $250,000 up to $1 million.
Where can students apply for this fellowship?
So for the fellowship program, you can apply online. We're actually recruiting soon. We're coming out next week with our new recruitment plan, and the program would start sometime in May. So very, very soon, students can start applying on our website.
All right. And the last one is: where can our listeners follow you?
Yeah. So follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter. We have Ripple Ventures, Ripple X Fellowship, and then my partner Matt also runs a podcast called Tank Talk. So that's the places where you can follow us. We also write a lot on Medium on our blog, also Ripple Ventures. So if you just search those up, those are quick ways to find us.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes below so that our listeners can get there easily. Totally vouch for your podcast as well. Very well run podcast. I've been a listener as well. So our listeners should definitely go out. Ripple Ventures, just go to the site. They're doing a bunch of stuff. You'll find everything there, and see where you can get involved. All right. Dominic, thanks for coming on. Love what you're doing, and happy investing.
Thank you so much, Prashant. Appreciate it.